Yeah, please grab the piece of paper that's being passed around. Because this chart is going to help you understand the concept that I'm trying to explain today. Without this chart, if you don't have this chart that you're going to fill in as we go along, then your mind is going to go bonkers. You won't be able to understand what I'm saying. Okay, and you should have something to write with. Osmi will be getting that to you soon. Verse 90, Surah an-nahl, Surah number 16, verse number 90. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون وأوفوا بعهد الله إذا عاهدتم ولا تنقضوا الأيمان بعد توكيدها وقد جعلتم الله عليكم كفيلا إن الله يعلم ما تفعلون ولا تكونوا كالتي نقضت غزلها من بعد قوة أنكاثا تتخذون أيمانكم دخلا بينكم أن تكون أمة هي أربى من أمة إنما يبلوكم الله به وليبينن لكم يوم القيامة ما كنتم فيه تختلفون صدق الله العظيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى. For most of us, it just means the khutbah, Arabic khutbah is coming to an end. Right? And I mentioned that this is one of the most inclusive ayats in the Quran in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala instructs us to do three things. Adal, ihsan, ita'i dhil qurba. Adal, we skipped over last Friday, and I said it would take me a good half an hour to explain it. But we went on to ihsan, we explained briefly what ihsan was, and also ita'i dhil qurba, giving to relatives. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prohibits from three things, وَيَنْهَى عَنِ الْفَحْشَاءِ, from lewdness, munkar, evil acts, and baghi, oppression. يَعِذُكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَذَكَّرُونَ, Allah admonishes you, reminds you, advises you, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَذَكَّرُونَ, so that you take heed. This ayat, it's not just recited by me, it's been recited in the Arabic khutbah by khatibs, thousands of khatibs all over the world for the last 1400 years. And the reason why it's recited is because, obviously, of its inclusiveness. Inna Allah ya'muru bil adl. Allah Azza wa Jal instructs us to be just. Instructs us justice, that we should have justice in our lives. What is adl? usually we think of adl when there's a dispute at some argument, or there's two parties, and one party is demanding its right, and the other party's rights have been trampled upon, have been wronged. So now the term adl and justice comes in play. But adl in Islam is far more vast. You have the chart in front of you. In the top, very first line, you can put Islam. In Islam, it consists of 5 categories, not 5 pillars, 5 categories, 5 branches. Iman would be number 1. And ibadat. Iman is aqaid, belief. Ibadat, I'll say the Arabic and the English. Feel free to put down whichever term you would like to put down. Ibadat is your acts of worship. Salat, Saum, Zakat, Hajj. And then mu'amalat, your interactions, your dealings, your contracts. You're going to work 8 hours a day would fall under mu'amalat. Your business. And for a farmer, is agricultural profession of harvesting. That all falls under mu'amalat because he has to deal with other human beings and he has to interact with them. Mu'asharat is your lifestyle. Mu'asharat. And the 5th, and you can put down number 5 under that line, is akhlaq, manners. Typically, what happens is we use the word adl only for the 3rd category, mu'amalat, interactions. Correct? If there's a contractual agreement between 2 parties, and one feels they have been wronged, they will go to court expecting justice, adl. Hoping for justice, hoping for adl, mu'amalat. But adl, justice, is in reality balanced, being fair, being balanced, being equitable. Iman, you can have adl in all 5 of these categories. What would be adl in iman? Let's give an example. Justice, balance. كَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا. We have made you a balanced ummah, a moderate ummah. A good example would be tawakkul. A person has trust in Allah. What are the 2 extremes? He has so much trust, such a level of trust that he thinks on one hand that he doesn't have to do anything. Allah will what? Take care of him. And he calls this trust in Allah. On the other hand, a person, he thinks everything is up to him. And everything is based upon his effort and nothing falls in the realm of Allah. And then the balance between adl between the 2 is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's hadith that tie your camel and put your trust in Allah. That's it, adl, in the 1st category. Ibadat, there's examples for each. Ibadat, where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam came and he saw a rope dangling and he said, "What is this rope? What's the purpose of this?" And Aisha radiallahu anha informed her, or was it one of the wives of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam who informed the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that when she worships and she gets tired, she ties herself to the rope, her hair, so that when she would doze off, there would be a knee-jerk reaction, right? And the rope would tug on her hair when she was in prayer, and she would wake up and continue praying. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Ma, sign a word of disapproval, that this is la shay, this is nothing. Take this rope down. Was there adl? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is describing adl. What is adl? What is balance in ibadah? Inna Allah la yamullu hatta tamullu. Allah does not get bored till you get bored. When you feel active, when your heart is into it, you are awake, alert, worship Allah to the best of your ability. When you're tired, go to sleep. Muamalat, and then muasharat and akhlaq. So there's adl, balance in all 5 categories. Muasharat, we're skipping to, there's a lot of muamalat. And muasharat, number 4, we said, that's also how we behave. Our interpersonal behavior is considered muasharat. How we interact with our neighbors falls under muasharat. And how we behave with the people in our household, our wives, our children, that falls under muasharat. Muasharat, an example of other, there's a person a loved one who dies in the family, right? Aqal, your intelligence on one side, we're coming to it. Aqal on one side will say, what's the point of grieving? Everyone who's born is going to die sooner or later. That's one extreme, okay? There's no point in grieving. There's no benefit. It's not going to bring the person back. Why grieve? Let's just laugh it off. That's intelligent. That's what if you're going purely rational, not bringing emotions into it. Put emotions on the side. There's no point of grief. Obviously, he was going to die sooner or later, right? It's no surprise. All old people die. Emotion, on the other hand, dictates that you grieve for a very long time and that you keep on grieving. Sharia will come and bring balance between the two and say grieving is natural, it's a human emotion. And how long to grieve? A wife on the death of her husband will grieve for 4 months and 10 days. For any other relative, you will express your grief, show signs of grief for no more than 3 days. And for a wife, she will express grief for how long? 4 months and 10 days. But then life moves on. Balance, adl. And then there's adl between the categories, the 5 categories. Before we move on, when iman comes, when a person accepts Islam, first comes iman. That's the first thing that comes into a person's life. Belief in Allah. Then ibadat, worship. Then his muamalat, his dealings, his interaction with other people. Then muasharat, his behavior, his social behavior with society, with the society around him. And then the last thing that comes is akhlaq, 5th. And when Islam leaves a person's life or a community's life, what's the first thing to go? Akhlaq. That's the first thing to go. That's the first thing to take the exit out the door. Then muasharat. Then muamalat will leave. Then ibadat will leave, and in the end, iman will leave. Now he's not a Muslim anymore, at least in all practical sense. He might call himself a Muslim, and his name might be Abdullah and Abdul Rahman, but he has almost nothing to do with Islam. All 5 categories have left his life. So when Islam comes, it comes from number 1, then number 2, and when it leaves from where? Number 5, then 4, then 3, then 2, and then finally 1. And then there's adl between the categories. There's balance and justice between the categories. Many examples of this. One is, for example, between number 2 And number 4, ibadat and muashara. Salman Farsi radiallahu anhu, he was made the brother of Abu Darda. In brotherhood, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam in Medina Munawwara, he chose one Ansari and made him a brother of a Muhajir. So every Muhajir coming from Makkah was made a brother of Ansari, resident of Medina Munawwara. Salman Farsi, being a Muhajir, was made the brother of Abu Darda radiallahu anhu. Think of it as a mentor program, taking care of their needs. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi, actually they even have that now with the refugee families. They have this mentoring program. It's funny how we don't get in, it's funny how we're not in the loop, but Catholic Community Services, they have this program where, and they go through their churches. I don't know why they don't approach the masjid, but they go through the churches and then the church makes committees. And what happens is these refugees that are from obviously where? Muslim countries, they're given one mentor family. One family that teaches them the ropes. That refugee family has their own place to live. They're not going to live in their home. They have their own place, they have their own finances. Just teach them a little bit about customs and how to get around. Anyhow, so this brotherhood that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam formed between Abu Darda and Salman Farsi. The ayat of hijab had not yet come. Salman Farsi, he went to visit the house of Abu Darda radiallahu, and he was not home. And he looked at and he saw the wife of Abu Darda that she was in shabby clothes. So he said, "What's this? Sister, I see you in shabby clothes." And she said, "Your brother has no interest. Your brother Abu Darda has no interest in me. He fasts all day and he prays all night." So then, maybe soon after that, Abu Darda comes. And then the food is presented. Abu Darda radiallahu anhu says, "I'm not going to eat." Salman Farsi radiallahu anhu says, "I'm not going to eat till you eat." And I, being the guest, right, if you want to be a good host and show hospitality, then I'm not going to eat until you eat. So Abu Darda radiallahu anhu, he breaks his fast and he eats with Salman Farsi. Then when it was time to go to sleep, put the bedding out, Salman Farsi and Abu Darda, they both go to sleep, radiallahu anhu. After a while, Abu Darda, he gets up to pray. Salman Farsi radiallahu anhu says, "No, go back to sleep." And then he gets up again after a while. He says, "No, go back to sleep." Tries to get up again. He says, "No." Finally, when there's only 1/3 of the night left, then Salman Farsi radiallahu anhu says, "Now get up and pray." And they both get up and they pray Qiyamul Layl. Then Abu Darda radiallahu anhu, he said, "Inna li nafsika alayka haqqun." Your body has a right over you. Your family has a right over you. Your guest, "Inna li zawrika alayka haqqun." Your guest has a right over you. And Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, they repeated this incident, and Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam used pretty much the exact same words and complimented Salman Farsi radiallahu anhu that he did the right thing. What was it? It was a balance between what? 2, ibadat and muasharat. Right? So that's balance between ibadat and muasharat. Okay. So far so good? You following? All of this falls under adl, balance. Now comes, so for number 1, you can put adl in each category. And then number 2, you can put adl between the categories. then I gave you an example of adl in each category, at least for number 1, 2, and 4. And then adl between the categories, I gave you an example of adl balance between number 2 and 4, ibadat and muasharat. Now if you go down, you see the 3 lines, and the middle line has an arrow on both sides, and I have written the word aql, intelligence. Human being, this falls under akhlaq. I'm explaining adl in akhlaq. Okay, this is a more detailed explanation of adl, balance, fairness, justice, in the 5th category, akhlaq. And I'm basically summarizing a 400-page book on akhlaq. Okay, so don't take this for granted. Aql, this is what all Islamic akhlaqiyat, this is the philosophy behind Islamic manners. Aql, human being, he has 2 qualities. One is the desire to achieve good for himself, what is beneficial. Put that in the first line, shahwat. You can put down shahwat or desire. Shahwat in Urdu means lust, but here it means shahwat ishtiha, desire. The need to have, the desire to have. And then on the other side, I wrote aql in the middle, which means intelligence. On the other hand, every human being has the desire to repel harm from him. He wants to push away, he wants to save himself from harm. That desire is called ghadab. Loosely translated as anger. So you have desire on one side and anger on the other side. What dictates what is beneficial for a human being and what is harmful? Shahwat is the desire to achieve what is beneficial for yourself, and ghadab is the anger, is the desire to repel anything that it could be harmful to you. But what dictates what is harmful and beneficial? Aql. Right? A boy who's 2 years old, he doesn't know, because he doesn't have the intelligence, he does not know what is harmful and what is beneficial. He might touch fire. He might touch a live electrical cord. So aql will determine that. And if you look at all human behavior, this is probably oversimplifying it. I wouldn't say that, but if you look at all human behavior, it's all based on these 3 very simple, what we call it, desires. Shahwat on one side, ghadab on the other side, and aql to determine which is which. Now, shahwat is the desire to, each of these 3 is broken down into, again, 2. You can see that, right? So this is where you're going to fill this out. Shahwat is the desire to achieve what is good for you, what is beneficial. What are the 2 extremes when it comes to shahwat? I want to achieve whatever is good at all cost, even if it means hurting someone else. That is one extreme. That is called fujur. Fujur means crossing the limit. Crossing the boundary, going outside the boundary. An example, and you can put the example of that, mirath, zulm in mirath, inheritance. Sharia has determined a portion for each member of the family. A person, he deprives, a male member, let's say, he deprives his sisters, a brother, he deprives his sisters from their share, and he takes all the share that the father has left behind for himself. That's one extreme of shahwat. What's the other extreme? Jamud. Jamud means stationary. No ambition, no desire, or not enough desire to achieve that which is good for him. An example of that is he gives everything away to his own detriment. Sadaqah kul, gives everything. Quran had said, وَلَا تَبْسُطْهَا كُلَّ الْبَسْطِ. Do not be so generous that you stretch out both hands. فَتَقْوُدَ مَلُومًا مَدْحُورًا. You sit down regretful and embarrassed that now you have nothing. Being a hermit, right, would fall into that. I'm giving you the two extremes. What is the balance between the two? You see the two arrows coming together? The balance between the two is adal. It's called iffat. Iffat is the balance between the two extremes of shahwat. Moving on, where I wrote down aql, intelligence. There's also two extremes for this. Jarbaza is one extreme. Highly intelligent, too intelligent for himself. Intelligent not in the good sense, sometimes. Have you seen all the atheists? Richard Dawkins, and they talk very intelligent. Some of their arguments make a lot of sense, but so intelligent because aql has a place too. Aql has a place. Aql does not trump everything. Intelligence has its own place, its own purpose, its own utility. If a person depends on his aql and thinks he's so smart, the extreme is that he denies the existence of Allah altogether. That's one extreme. And the other extreme, you can put down on the other line, right under the two arrows of aql, safahat, which means foolishness, fool. Safahat. That's where he doesn't use his intelligence at all. And then you'll see a YouTube video of Hindus worshipping mice. Have you seen that one? A temple full of mice. And they just lie down on the floor, and what are they doing? Worshipping mice. That's safahat, that's foolish. Those are the two extremes. And what's the balance between the two? Hikmat. That's the quality of adal between the two extremes of aql, which is highly too intelligent and too foolish. Hikmat, which is wisdom. And then you have the third one, which we said was what? Ghadab, anger. Anger is the desire to push away harm. A person sees something as harmful. Anger is good for you, right? Anger is good, but there has to be a balance in anger. What's the one extreme of anger is tahawwur. Tahawwur means out of control. To the extent of mad. One is angry, one is mad. Person sees someone has harmed him, instead of resolving it, he picks up a gun and shoots him. That's one extent of tahawwur, extreme. What's the other? Jubn. What is jubn? Cowardice. Coward. He sees something as harmful, but he doesn't do anything about it. You might call him a pushover. He's a pushover. That means anyone can take advantage of him. And what's the middle point? What's moderation? What's adal between these two? Between mad and coward? Shuja', which is what? Brave. Okay. Now, what are the three words you have there at the very bottom? Iffat, hikmat, and shuja'. The combination of those three, because iffat is a balance between it's a balance between shahwa, it's a moderate point. And hikmat is the balance between aql, the two extremes of aql. And shuja' is the balance or the middle point between the two extremes of ghadab, anger. Right? And the three, if you have all three in proportion, is adal. What is it? Adal. That's adal in akhlaqiyah. Does that make sense? Somewhat. So you see the word adal is very comprehensive. It includes there has to be adal in all 5 categories. Iman, ibadat, muamalat, muasharat, and akhlaq. There has to be adal between the categories. One can't lean towards one. And we see this problem where many people, they will lean towards one and abandon the other. And we think, we told, oh, that's in the name of humanity or individualism. We think that's all right. We think that's all right. For example, if a person, he might be, his akhlaq might be very good. He has empathy towards the poor, akhlaq, right? He has empathy towards the poor. But then he doesn't believe in God. Where's adal? Right? He's ready to feed 1,000 orphans a day. He's a Muslim, but he doesn't want to pray his 5 daily prayers. There's no adal, there's no balance in his life. So this, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he created ummati adila. Ummati adila. And that's why I have said before that if Christianity, if it can be summarized in one word, which they do, is love. They summarize Christianity as love. Islam, if it was to be summarized in one word, it would be adal. Balance. Balance in all. Moderation and balance. When it comes to aqaid, belief, to go to any extreme, to go to one extreme to say that Jesus is the Son of God, that's going to one extreme. You've lost balance, you've lost adal. Right? And then on the other hand, right, with the Jews killed the prophets, the Anbiya alayhi salatu wasalam, whichever one was sent to them, they would say, off you go. That's the other extreme. Balance between all. Each and every, the whole jama'ah, the whole group of Sahaba, they had this quality of adl. And that's what Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam worked for. Today, that's what we are lacking. You have seen people, they either will choose, they will pick and choose. They will go to one category and go into one extreme, or even in that category, they will go to one extreme. Adl in all the categories, and amongst the categories, even in akhlaq. All this description that I gave of shahwat, aqal, and ghadab, that all comes under the category of akhlaq, number 5, in case you're wondering. And this is what makes a complete human being. Having the quality of adl is what makes a complete human being. A person can go to Hajj 20 years in a row, and he can go for Umrah in Ramadan for 20 years in a row, and he can pray his prayers behind the Imam with Takbira Ula, not missing a single prayer for months and months on end. But that doesn't mean he's a decent human being. Decent human being will be when he has adl, when he has balance in all aspects of his life. We'll stop here, inshallah. That was one word, adl. That inna Allah ya'murukum bil adl. Allah commands you to be fair, to be balanced, to be just. And that's why I said that justice is not only when you have a dispute with someone, but in all these different categories. We'll stop here, inshallah.